Hello there and welcome to Sports Tonight Live as we count down to the Six Nations Championship. I'm Rhodri Williams, and as far as I'm concerned, it is the greatest sporting contest in the world, rugby or otherwise. And joining me for this special programme, former England coach Dick Best and Ben Coles from the rugbyblog.co.uk. Welcome to you both. Right, first of all, Dick, what does it mean to you, the Six Nations, this special tournament?
Well, it's something special. It's very different to anything else that goes before it, like the Autumn Internationals or a World Cup or anything else that's going on, to be perfectly honest. This is full of nationalistic pride, and it's where people show their true colours. The games might not be the most exciting in the world to an outsider, but for anybody who's English, Irish, Welsh or Scottish or French or Italian, it's something very, very special, and you really get behind your team for these sort of occasions.
And it brings the fans in, regardless of whether they follow the sort of regional rugby anyway, whether you're following the Rabo Pro Direct in Wales and Scotland and Ireland, or you're following the Premiership or not. You get involved in the Six Nations.
Absolutely. Some of the fiercest rivalries around in sport, I think, when you look at games like Ireland v Wales this Sunday or the crunch in France between France and England, I mean, that's going to be a fantastic game. And the fans really want their sides to win in this competition because it's got such a great history and because it means so much to get one over your closest enemy.
I remember talking to Martin Johnson a couple of seasons ago, and he said he loved it because everybody just gets together and go on the smash. That's the supporters. As for the players and part of the coaching team, Dick, you've been there at the coalface and you've enjoyed a Grand Slam and you've had some not so great times. You've experienced it all.
Yeah, my record is actually quite good in it. I've only lost a couple of times in Six Nation games, and it's you feel as though you are representing your country, and you feel as though my wife got sort of knocked off her perch in the supermarket once when we lost a game against Ireland, and someone came up to her and said, "Oh, your husband has let us all down by losing to Ireland," and she said, "Well, it's a bit much. I think you should tell him yourself," sort of thing. It'll punch your lights out. But it's a wonderful competition. As I said before, it's where everyone shows their true colours and you get behind your team. And we have a different team this time around. Big changes. No Martin Johnson anymore. Very, very ordinary looking side and a very average looking coaching team, to be perfectly honest. But you've still got to get behind them and support them to the hilt.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little while. As far as the Six Nations, the excitement, the unpredictability, Ben, that's what I like about it. We're coming off a World Cup. You can look back at the World Cup and go, right, well, France got to the final, Wales had a good, but Ireland actually looked quite good, and maybe Scotland should have beaten Argentina, they should have beaten England. And that's the excitement for me, is when you actually sit there, you're pretty non-committal as to who you think will win the championship.
Absolutely. Every year we tend to get a result that kind of raises eyebrows. I think it was last year when Italy beat France. Nobody expected that to happen.
Certainly the French did.
No, absolutely not. And then you get these years after World Cups where that 4-year cycle's just finished and teams are rebuilding and they have new coaches, and in England's case a lot of new players. And you have no idea how teams are going to perform or how they're going to gel together, and that unpredictability just doubles in this kind of tournament, and that's why 2012 Six Nations is so exciting.
Before we look at the teams individually, and we'll do that of course, let's look at the fixtures and the way they pan out, because I'm sure, Dick, that's something as a coach you look at. For England, the Blues all away, so they're away to Scotland, away to France, away to Italy. That can, for this young side, was that how you liked it? I mean, it was the Five Nations, obviously, when you were in.
It was the Five Nations, and ironically, our first game was away to Scotland, and it was always going to be a difficult encounter. That was in 1992, and don't forget, in 1990 there was that famous game where Scotland, where both Scotland and England were going for the Grand Slam, and Scotland won, and there was all the sort of ructions that went with it. So to go back there, with England having won a Grand Slam in '91. And me going back there as the only real change to the side as the coach in '92, I felt that the whole responsibility of sort of winning another Grand Slam. If we hadn't won a Grand Slam, why haven't we won a Grand Slam? What's the difference? The difference is Dick Best. Let's get rid of him, sort of thing, because he's obviously brought some bad luck onto the scene. But yeah, it was a huge experience for me, because before that I'd never been to Murrayfield before. Never played a game at Murrayfield. In fact, during the game, one of the players got injured. I went downstairs to see how badly they were cut. On my way back upstairs, I went left instead of right, and found myself outside the stadium, locked out. And it was only because an English committee man was coming out to have a cigarette that somebody opened the door, and I managed to nip back in and see the game. Under some criticism from the rest of the staff, I can tell you.
Expectations are interesting. England, of course, the biggest team, they would have themselves think. France, the expectations because they got to the final of the World Cup despite the complete chaos. They got a new coach now. Wales, I mean, the expectations there are huge. I think the only time Wales play well normally when they got their backs against the wall, or they're playing with a bit of confidence. Scotland, people just want to see them score tries. There are different expectations for each nation, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember the last time that the Welsh people didn't expect Wales to win a Grand Slam or a championship. So I think that's pretty normal.
Well, we've done it a couple of times recently, obviously.
Just a couple. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, yes, they had a great World Cup tournament, but then they've lost their last 3 fixtures to France and then to Australia twice, and you've got so many injuries on the front five. Where I think only Adam Jones is left of their first choice front five, which impacts your scrum massively. Every team is coping with various kind of different injuries or problems with their squad, apart from France, who are pretty much at full strength. If you're looking on the basis of injuries and new players coming in.
Yeah, that is professional sport, isn't it, Dick? Is dealing with injuries. You know it's going to happen, and you've got to try and have the strongest squad system possible.
You have, but no matter what has happened before, this Six Nations is irrelevant, really. France being in a World Cup final, England being quite shabby, Wales being one of the best teams in the World Cup. I mean, forget all that. It's irrelevant now. This is a new era, a new dawn, and sides all trying to find their way. France look the most comfortable because they've got the bulk of the side that played in the World Cup final. But who in their right mind is going to put money on France? They don't know how they're going to play. They should win the Six Nations at a canter. They should win a Grand Slam. They've got very few changes. It's evolution there rather than revolution. And St Andre is one of the smartest coaches in the world. And as I say, they should win comfortably. But there's always that element of doubt about it, which is great, which is what makes the tournament.
And then there's 3 new coaches, of course, going into this tournament.
Yeah, 3 new coaches, and just looking at that picture, 5 new captains. Thierry de Courtois is the only guy who's remained. Another thing about France is you talk about Saint-André coming in. It must be so refreshing to bring in someone with a touch of sanity as your national coach.
He's certainly going to get a bit of discipline, you'd hope.
Well, yeah, and a bit more control, and actually get the squad all behind their captain, and all behind each other as a squad. I mean, if they can get to the World Cup final when they lose to Tonga and then they're fighting with each other all the way, imagine what they're like when they're going to be unified and playing for each other.
Who did you hate playing against the most, Dick?
French. French, without
doubt. Because of the unpredictability?
Well, it was basically because Brian Moore, for some unknown reason, just used to start winding them up round about the Tuesday, and it used to reach fever pitch by about Thursday when he started holding his own press conferences for it. And he would say some outlandish things, and the Saturday morning French press was unbelievable. The hatred of the roast beefs by the French, and you had to play well. Otherwise, you were going to get murdered, literally, either on the field or off it. And it was a really always a volatile game against the French. You knew it was going to be incredibly physical. Not that the others weren't, but there was an added dimension. There was an edge to playing against the French, because if you didn't play well, you knew there was every possibility you'd be on the end of a hiding of sort of 40, 50 points.
I remember speaking to Martin Williams after Wales won a Grand Slam in 2005, one of 2 in the noughties, of course, and he said that game against Scotland actually was, although they won it comfortably, was the most physical game that they came up against. And I was surprised at that, because the result was comfortable, but to him that's the game that took it out of him the most.
Yeah, what the Scots tend to lack in flair, should we say, they certainly make up for in physicality. And if we look ahead to this weekend, if you look at their centres, guys like Sean Lamont at 12, he's not a big kind of all frills handling kind of centre. He's just going to run at you and run at you hard and try and blast through you. So yeah, I guess that's a bit of a Scottish tradition that's carried on down the years, that kind of in your face Braveheart physicality.
And of course, with new players coming in, new stars will emerge as we see some who've retired, of course, whether it's England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, or France or Italy. We are likely to see. Who in 92 made the impact with you? Or were you pretty settled in 92?
Well, as I said, we were a very settled side. When you talk about the number of caps in this current England squad, 250 odd, I think, there were more caps in the front row in 92 than the current England squad. That was the level of experience and sort of hardened veterans that we had to deal with. I remember my first sort of meeting or my first team talk, and trying to do a bit of mental arithmetic around the room to see who I was talking to, and there was over 1,000 caps in the forwards alone, and I'd lost count of the backs because you had Underwood on 100, Carling on sort of 75, Guscott on the same sort of number, and it was just a massively experienced group of people, and you had to fight your way to get in on the bench, let alone get into the team. So it was a different era. It all started to fall apart after sort of 93, 94, a lot of those guys decided to retire, and that was another period of sort of rebuilding. But sport is cyclical, isn't it?
Okay, we're counting down to the 2012 RBS Six Nations Championship in the company of former England coach Dick Best and Ben Coles from the rugbyblog.co.uk. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Sports Tonight Live as we count down to the Six Nations Championship. I'm Rhodri Williams and I'm joined by former England coach Dick Best and Ben Coles of the rugbyblog.co.uk. Gentlemen, we've discussed in general what the Six Nations means. We've reminisced and looked back at Dick's time in 92 with a Grand Slam. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of today, the teams. We'll start with England. And I think the first thing we should do with England, we should put the team up because, Ben, this must be for the first time, the most unrecognisable side. Certainly for those who don't follow Premiership rugby, they won't know half of them.
Indeed, looking there, you've got 3 new caps there, and then you've got guys who are relatively new anyway in terms of both. He's only had 1 appearance so far against Wales in the warm-up games. Courvoisier is still pretty fresh, and Chris Robshaw as well. He was the New England captain, and he's only got 1 cap to his name as well from about 3 years ago, I think, against Argentina. So a very new team, another 5 new caps on the bench as well. It really is out with the old and in with the new.
This is the French team versus Italy. Some of the usual suspects there. Not too many changes there from the World Cup. We see in the centre there, Fofana is an introduction, of course, with Rhodri in the centre, which is quite exciting partnership. Dick?
Well, that's a Clermont midfield. Those 3 actually, Malzur as well. Fofana, watch out for him because he is a special talent and a great runner, a lovely elusive player. And if he's allowed to cut loose, he'll make mincemeat of some very, very big names.
Right, let's get back to the England team. And Dick, when you see that side with 3 new caps and very inexperienced, does it fill you with excitement or total worry?
There are some, in my opinion, some good selections, and there are some selections there that are a bit dubious. I would have to say Dowson instead of somebody like Nick Easter. A lot of caps, very experienced Easter, 33 years old. You don't want revolution when you're going into a Six Nations. You want a slow sort of evolution like France have done. You want people to come in there, and you want your 8, 9 and 10 to be as solid as a rock because they've got to control the game for you. Elsewhere in the side, Corbusero's had a mixed season so far as I'm concerned. He hasn't started that often for London Irish. He's come on as a replacement. He's been a bit part player in the London Irish setup, and he finds himself starting against a Six Nations game. Whether he's got the stamina to last a whole game, I personally would have gone for Nick Wood of Gloucester, who for me has been the form loose head. All right, another new cap, but he's been outstanding this season so far, and Corbusero hasn't. Hartley's missed out on captaincy. Dan Cole has been a worry for me in terms of the amount of penalties he gives away, especially at scrum time. He's going to be under a bit of pressure in this particular game, so he's got to look after himself. So there are people in there. Moritz Bertha, good solid player, but can he step up with his 1 cap? Can the captain Why give the captaincy to Robshaw for 2 games?
That's a huge question. Why give the captaincy to somebody for 2 games? What sort of messages does that? What messages does that send out?
Stuart Lancaster's been pretty good with his media so far, but I think we'll all agree that's a slip up, because it sends out a message to not just Scotland and Italy, but also the other teams in the Six Nations, that this guy is probably only going to be there for 2 games, and then Tom Wood's going to come back in. And also for Chris, it's not a great message to him either, as if to say, you've got 160 minutes to impress us, but then even that might not be enough, and we might get rid of you. Chris has earned his shot to be captain of England. I think he's bided his time. He's captained the Saxons. In terms of playing
with Harlequins?
Well, yeah, playing for Harlequins, he's been a fantastic leader this season. Look at the results they've achieved, winning in Toulouse and other results like that. So it's just one basic error that Lancaster should have made. He should have said that Robshaw was captain indefinitely, and then said that they'd make a change. There was no need to kind of say 2 games and then who knows.
Let's just have a look at some players you may not recognise. We were talking about the new look, so let's have a look at them on the screen here. Ben.
It's a flattering picture of Ben Morgan, the Scarlets number 8. Coming back to Nick Easter, if you're going to get rid of someone with experience and you're going to bring in someone new, looking forward long term, I don't really understand why you'd bring in Phil Dowson, who's 30, wrong side of 30, and look to try and play him there for what, a season, when you've got a guy like this who's on the bench, to be fair, against Scotland, but
could have played for Wales, of course.
Luckily didn't.
Smart boy. We like him. We can't understand why he's not playing. I mean, with the greatest of respect, if it's a brave new world, we should have chucked him in as well.
Should have stuck him in.
Yeah.
First
why
game.
pick as you pointed out, why pick another 30-year-old like Dowson, who's been around, everyone knows what he can do. You've thrown Dowson in there, and he's not going to make the next World Cup in 4 years' time. So this is the kid of the future.
But he's been picked on form, is that fair to say?
Who, Dowson? Yeah, I mean, he's been playing okay, but this kid has been outstanding for the Llanelli Scarlets. And I mean outstanding. This guy's actually stood up in the Heineken Cup, which is really the place that you go to where you pick players from to play in the Six Nations.
Being that close to international.
The bridge is getting closer, you know.
Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at another one of the new boys. There we go, Ben.
Rob Webber, yeah, Wasp hooker, actually just signed for Bath this week on a 3-year deal. A surprise selection, I think it's fair to say, given that he hasn't been playing impeccably well for Wasps this season. I've looked at guys, the 2 Harlequins hookers, Joe Gray and Chris Brooker, and overall, I'd say they've been playing better rugby than Webber has. Webber's been playing in a team that have struggled with injuries and loss of former stars, and he has ended up in the squad, and now really it's his chance to impress, and we'll probably see him come off the bench against Scotland, I imagine, at Murrayfield.
You're a fan, though. Yeah.
I am a fan. I think he's a good all-round player. He's a good thrower in, and they would have taken advice from somebody like Simon Hardy, who's the England line-out coach, who travels the country working with these guys, and they'd have gone to him and said, listen, who's the best line-out thrower? And he'd probably be up there very close to them with guys like Lee Mears, who of course is another one on the wrong side of 30. But he has been in a Wasp team that's been on the back foot scrum time. They really have struggled, and it would be nice to see him have an opportunity to be on a front foot in an England team, because he can play around the field. This boy's not a bad ball carrier, and he's a tackler. They want ball carriers in this England team. They want everybody in the forwards to be able to play with the ball and run and do something with it, to run and handle and be part of the sort of 15-man game, which is, I believe, their game plan.
The last of the new boys, Geoff Parling.
Yep, Geoff Parling bided his time at Newcastle for a good few years, and then made the move to Leicester. And probably a really surprising selection, because he's been out injured for so long this season. He's literally had, I think, 2 games back for the Tigers after a very long injury layoff. But he's impressed the coaches. He's impressed Graham Rowntree, the forwards coach, and he's come in and a really good line-out operator, really solid in the loose, will punch some holes. And it'd be interesting to see how close he was to getting selected for the first team, actually, in terms of with both and Palmer there. Maybe he could have snuck in. But he's obviously ahead of Dave Atwood as well, because Dave Atwood was released this week, so he must have impressed in camp.
Right, let's turn our attention to Scotland now, and we're joined on the Skype wall by a strong Scottish fan there in Phil Taylor. Phil, a very good evening to you. How are you?
Good evening. I'm very well, thank you. If a bit cold.
A bit cold, but that's all right. So, are you hopeful for the first fixture against England, this new-look England side?
A bit apprehensive at best, I think. The England that's coming up is going to be a different England that played in the World Cup. And Scotland have been punching above their weight in recent terms. Although we had a disappointing World Cup, because England apparently were there for the taking. So I think realistically apprehensive.
We've got Dick Best and Ben Coles here. I'm not sure if they'd share your view. Should they be apprehensive, Scotland?
I think it's time for Scotland to start to deliver. You know, they bombed out in the World Cup, first time ever to not make a quarter-final. They've got a chance now with this youngish-looking English side coming up there. Great start for Scotland, as far as I'm concerned, to play England first up before they've had time together, because this English team is a bit like a Lions team almost. They've had a couple of weeks together and that's it. You know, this Scottish team now has been together for a very long time, and they've got to start delivering, I think, as far as Andy Robinson is concerned, because A, they haven't been able to score tries, and B, they haven't delivered in recent times. So it's going to be there's a lot of pressure on Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, they've been close, but there's only so long you can keep being close. Phil, just stay with us there. We're just going to show the Scotland team for this Calcutta match. And, you know, some interesting and exciting pair-ups there. The Calcutta Parks. Of course, things in Scotland have gone very well. If you look at Heineken Cup, Edinburgh have been great in that. Glasgow have got good domestic form. Lamont, they're very exciting. The front row, Jacobson, Ford, who's the captain, Murray, quite a strong, solid front row. Not a bad side, Ben.
Not a bad side, not at all. I mean, and the best thing is to see how many form players are in there. Guys like Rennie, Denton at 8 has really impressed at Edinburgh so far this season, and Lee Jones as well is uncapped on the wing. I'd like to ask Phil, what are your thoughts on Dan Parks at fly half? Do you feel it's time to move on? Guys like Duncan Weir playing for Glasgow in great form, and yet he hasn't made the side. What do you think about that?
In defence of Andy Robinson, he's picked a side that he thinks that will win the game on Saturday. Dan Parks has had a bit of a roller coaster ride as far as his Scotland career is concerned. I think Andy Robinson sees him as a safe pair of hands, or even a safe boot. But there has been a bit of talk as to why didn't we have a bit more of a dynamic standoff this time round.
Well, who would you rather have?
Well, of the fit ones, there's not really a lot of choice. There's Duncan Weir or Greg Laidlaw. Greg Laidlaw has shown for Edinburgh that with his partnership with Mike Blair, he's been able to get his backline moving at speed. And that's been shown by Edinburgh's try count.
Phil, it's interesting you say that. Of course, they're on the bench, though. And being a squad game, Dick, isn't it nice? You know, we look at the England bench, and that's even more sparse than the team itself. And suddenly you look at Scotland, and if you can bring Laidlaw and Blair, who, as Phil rightly said, have been playing fantastic for Edinburgh, that's not a bad weapon to bring on a little later in the game.
It's a nice idea, but realistically, Six Nations games, and especially historically the first ones, there's always a lot of kicking, and you want somebody out there who's going to nail those 3 points and just get your nose in front. And hopefully get a platform for the cavalry to come on and show what they can do. But to be perfectly honest, if I was Andy Robinson, I'd have probably gone for Parks as well, because he's tried and tested, and we know that he can do the job, especially against England.
Are we going to get a try though, Phil? This is the thing. We need try. I know Scotland fans are bored of it now, but I tell you what, even as a Welsh fan, I'm bored of it when I see them play.
Well, they've got a couple of try scorers on the starting lineup in Lee Jones and Chunk Jacobson in the front row. Chunk Jacobson scored a couple of tries for Edinburgh from distance, so he's not a bad runner. I think Dan Parks is going to be kicking for position a lot of the time if we're on the back foot, and he's pretty good at that. I also think that having Blair and Laidlaw on the bench, it doesn't matter whether we're chasing the game or in front. Both of them are able to pull things out of the bag to make things happen.
All right, well, Phil, just very quickly to finish then, your prediction.
I'm going to go with my heart this time and say Scotland by 7.
There you go. We'll watch with interest. Enjoy the opening weekend, Phil. Hope we're talking to you next week and you're smiling.
Yep. Okay, yeah. I'm looking forward to the weekend, particularly Sunday's clash between Wales and Ireland.
Yes, good man.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all?
And I know you're hoping for a Welsh win, Phil. I can just tell.
Only if I'm watching in the pub because my wife's Irish.
Phil, what a mix-up, what a mix you are, I've got to say. Bit of Irish there, bit of Scottish, fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll talk to you next week. Very interesting indeed. I think Andy Robinson, I mean, Dick, I know he enjoyed a skiing holiday very recently. He's all nice and relaxed, but the pressure is on for him to get that result.
Yes, it is. I mean, there's a lot of people looking at Andy now and saying, you know, that it hurt the Scots a lot to bomb out of the World Cup before the quarterfinals. First time it's ever happened to them. So people all of a sudden, you know, Andy's had a good ride there. All of a sudden we're starting to point the finger at Andy Robinson. And he's got some firepower in this team now. You know, the two Lamonts playing. He's got two quick wings. You know, they should be looking to score some tries this time round. They've got some good players in the backs. And if we were picking a British Lions team, there's a few of them would creep into it at the moment. So, you know, you would say that he's under intense pressure, A, to beat England, and B, to start, you know, rising up the ranks of the Six Nations table.
All right, let's turn to Sam, England fan Sam. He's also a Saracens fan. Look at the smile on his face because he's got some Saracen players in key positions. Looking forward to it.
It's about time, Rhodri. It is about time.
Come on, are they going to make a difference?
I think they are. I don't think we'll see the Saracens' way of playing with England. I think the pack is probably too lightweight to do the sort of Saracens grinding out victories. But I don't think you should be too quick to sort of talk detrimentally about the Saracens' attack either. People say, oh, they're boring, they kick a lot of ball away. Well, they do that. But I tell you, when they score tries, they're very accurate, and that's down to Charlie Hodgson primarily.
Yeah, and of course you've got Owen Farrell as well, who's not a bad player, is he?
No, he's not. No, 20. I mean, the boy can play. I mean, he skipped out the Saxons completely. It was only last summer. He's at the under-20s World Championships, and you know, he has no fear whatsoever. I mean, Premiership final. You saw Toby Flood creak and miss quite a few goals. No such problem for Owen Farrell.
Sam, are we going to see an exciting England display this time, do you think?
I think we are. Yeah, I think there's a lot of pace. There's a lot of players in form, and I think the pack is not the sort of heavyweight pack of old, which is sort of grinding out victories. I think we've got a quick back row which will utilise quick ball, and I think we'll see the backs fly.
Brad Barrett, a word on him?
Yeah, Brad Barrett. I mean, many people think he's actually a crash ball centre, which I would argue against. He played quite a lot of fly half when he was in South Africa. He's actually got some quite subtle hands, and he's a good distributor of the ball. So between the three of them, Charlie Hodgson, Owen Farrell, and Brad Barrett, you've got three who can distribute. You know, so interchangeable as well, which can only be good from second, third, fourth phase attack.
Soft hands for a big guy. That's a tag I used to like myself, actually. But under Stuart Lancaster, we're talking about the 15-man game. Dick Best and Ben Coles are with me here. Sam's here. Welcome to sort of interchange and have a chat with them. Are we going to see that kind of open game? Certainly. Are their expectations totally wrong? Are we looking at at least 60 minutes of quite tight rugby under Lancaster? There's
definitely going to be an element of that. I mean, Stuart Lancaster is A, applying for a job, and B, you know, world rankings are important going for the World Cup as well. So, I mean, there is an element that the wins are important, but I think he's keen, from all accounts, to get away from the sort of the old routine under Martin Johnson and before that even of sort of we're going to dominate set piece and we're going to grind out the victory. So I think, judging from what he's picked, I think, you know, it's a very mobile group of ball carriers, and I think we will see open attacking rugby. I mean, if either of the teams are going to be sort of wishing to keep it tight and sort of play that tight game, it's more likely to be Scotland. Sam, top man, thank you very much for your thoughts. Would you agree, Dick?
I think he's certainly right about we don't have the ability to stick the ball up our jumper and drive people 10, 15, 20 yards. You know, those days are over with this particular selection of English forwards. because they're just not that way inclined, and they've not been together long enough. And I don't care who's coaching them. You know, it takes a long time to build that sort of platform so that where you can control it. So there is no game plan B. There's going to be a game plan A, which is, I would imagine, you know, play, let everybody play. And it will be fast. You know, we've picked a side, we've got good ball carriers, we've got line-out ability, we'll be able to scrum against the Scots, we'll win our own ball, and we want to play. We've got great distributors, I would say, because Hodgson is one of these players who can pass off both hands at speed, running at speed, and he is one of the best passers in the world. So with any luck, our strike runners, you know, Ashton and co, Foden, hopefully will touch the ball and we'll be able to stretch the Scots and play a bit. But realistically, this is Six Nations rugby. The pressure comes on, the must-win attitude, and I really hope that this team is different and sort of dispenses with that. But this comes down to a win at the end of the day, and they're probably, like most Six Nations games, there'll be 3 points in it.
Okay, we continue the countdown to the RBS Six Nations Championship 2012 in the company of former England coach Dick Best and Ben Coles from the rugbyblog.co.uk. We're back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Sports Tonight Live as we count down to the 2012 RBS Six Nations Championship. I'm Rhodri Williams. I'm joined in the studio by former England coach Dick Best and by Ben Coles from the rugbyblog.co.uk. We're looking at the teams individually. We'll focus now on Wales, and let's head straight to the phone actually and join one of the great characters from Wales. He's also part of the Scrum 5 BBC team, and that is Richard O'Shea, better known as Rick O'Shea. Rick, are you hopeful for Wales?
Not right, Rod. How are you?
Not with that. Very tidy, but very tidy.
Am I hopeful for Wales? We're always hopeful, aren't we, Rod? You know, that's the default setting in Wales. We have this ridiculous, elevated sense of expectation, optimism. I think those of us who are sensible and try to be grounded about it. No, I'm not particularly hopeful because Ireland in Dublin are a fearful beast. I remember going with you 10 years ago. Remember that, Rod, when we went on that trip to Lansdowne Road?
I wish I could remember it, Rick.
Well, I do remember leaving you at that night. But anyway, that's another story. That was a Sunday fixture. It was Graham Henry's last game in charge. 54 points to 10. They gave us a terrible bump in that day. I don't think we'll see anything like that, but I think the bubble has burst after the World Cup, and we're not a side that seems to kick on very well from our successes, Rod. And of course, the injury list is mounting. Although there's a little bit of an urban feeling now, a myth that this is all part of Gatland and Edwards' psychology. But you know what we're like for a rumour here in the Valley, Rod.
We love a rumour. Do you think that the Polish training camp will have set them up nicely for this, or a bit too close to the tournament?
Well, I'll tell you what, they could have done some cryotherapy here in the car park at St Pierre, mate. It's -3.
Are you speaking?
I am freezing my not inconsiderable, what's the names off, yeah? However, yeah, look, it worked well, didn't it? It worked well for us going ahead into the World Cup, and I think that there is some science behind this, and that they don't get these guys for an awful lot of time. The windows of opportunity that the national coaches get to work with the boys is quite small. So the whole rationale was that they would go to Poland, they would really give them a hard going over. But Gatland also does these brief, short bursts of intense activity. They get absolutely hammered. These cryogenic chambers, and then give them a chance to recover. I'm not entirely sure the physiology behind it, but that's the math. They've done that again, but I don't think this has been anything like as intense, because this is, in the middle of the season, so the guys are injured, they're nursing wounds anyway. It worked before the World Cup, and I think there's an awful lot of psychology in sport, so going there again might be possible to generate that kind of positive thing going forward. But these injuries that we've got are in such key positions, Rod, that if they are true, then we're going to struggle.
Yeah, and we don't know if they can play yet. Rick, stay on the phone. I know if you've got to go because you've got another dinner. I know you do about 3 dinners a week. You must be a multi-millionaire by now. If you've got to go, I understand. But Dick Best and Ben Coles in the studio, you're welcome to jump in and react there. Dick, Wales with the injury list, no Gethin Jenkins, no Alan Wynne-Jones, no Luke Charteris. This Rhys Priestland situation we're still waiting on.
Yes, in my opinion, too many key players, too many doubts over key players. I mean, they may come back like Lazarus at the last minute and change everything. Has the bubble burst? I don't think so. I think, they're onto something by going back to Poland. It's going over the steps that you did before the World Cup. I think the players coming into the side all want to prove themselves. They're all reasonably talented players, and they've all got something to offer Wales. And they've set a benchmark now, Wales, and these players have to step up to it if they want to sort of fill in the shoes of the great players that are injured at the moment. So I think they're on for I think they'll give Ireland a really hard time.
And we're pretty good in
I think
go on,
that's
Rick.
a great point. That's a great point that Dick's making, actually, because the Wales team went to the World Cup without too many great expectations, and it was those World Cup warm-up games where some players who were fringe players prior to that did step up. We're talking about Priestland, who no one really thought of as a starting number 10, is now the first name down on the sheet when it comes to the back division. So I think that Dick does make a very good point there, that there's people who have got the opportunity to step up. There's a lot of talk that Rhys Gill could be the guy that replaces Gethin Jenkins on the loose head. So there are opportunities there, and young, hungry players can be very formidable.
I'll tell you what, Ben, well, let's have a look at the Irish team, because that is a pretty settled one. The big question, of course, who was going to fill the number 13, the Brian O'Driscoll shirt. It's Keith Earls who has played in that position, of course, for his club. But it's a familiar looking team, Ben.
I think that's the point. If you talk about Wales injuries in the type 5, you've got no Gethin Jenkins and no Matthew Rhys for this first game, and then no Charteris and Alan Wynne-Jones. And then you look at that Irish type 5 of Healy, Best and Ross and O'Callaghan and O'Connell. That is so solid and so experienced at playing together. I just think that's where Ireland are going to win the game. They're going to win it up front in the scrum, and they're going to win it in the line-out. And then, in the centre, how Gordon Darcy is still playing international rugby is beyond me. When you've got guys like Fergus McFadden at Leinster, who's just had such a fantastic season in Darcy's 12 shirt, and yet he is still on the bench. And Keith Earls for Brian O'Driscoll, not a bad swap, but then you can't really replace someone like Brian O'Driscoll, can you? I mean, Keith Earls is a wonderful player, but is he a 13? I'm not sure we even know yet. He might be better on the wing.
Well, where is the building here for the next World Cup? There isn't, because you've got 2 locks there, 30 plus, and they're clearly not going to make it, because they're on their last legs now. Yeah. There's no changes there, really, from last season. So they're happy to proceed, and get their game plan right. Trimble's come in. Yes, the 2 centres have got a big sort of pair of shoes to fill between them. Are they good enough? He's got them out of so much trouble before. O'Driscoll's always scored the vital try. Yes, there is a gap there, but they're a good all-round side. But there's no evolution or revolution here in Ireland. It's the same old, and that's what's scary about it. Is because they see an opportunity, I think, to win this Six Nations.
Yeah. OK, Rick, the type 5 there for Ireland, too much? I thought we sort of ran them off the park in the World Cup. It was our fitness that told in the end. Maybe the same again.
We did, but I wouldn't expect Ireland to come and bring the same tactics. I mean, how we won that game back in the quarterfinals, we stopped them. We stopped their big players. Yeah, they got a decent front 5. I wouldn't get too overboard about them. I think they got good second rows. I've never been particularly enamoured with the Irish front rows because I think they get away with murder, but that's a chat for another day. It's the back row. It was their big ball carriers: O'Brien, Hayslip, Ferris, Warburton, Lydiard, and Falatau stopped them right at the breakdown, and then Ireland had no answer. They had nowhere to go, and I think they're going to have to try and rearrange the way that Ireland play, and I'm not sure they can do that. Going back to the problem that they've got in replacing O'Driscoll, they used to say, if you want to stop Ireland, you stop O'Driscoll. Well, we've achieved that because he isn't playing, and so that's a great advantage. And if Jamie Roberts were fit, and this is what this whole thing is about, delaying the team, if he is fit, and then you've got the likes of George North and possibly Cuthbert playing in that back 3, then it's just going to be a question of, no matter who plays 10, get the ball to me, and we will run at Earls and Darcy, because Darcy is a lovely footballer, and Earls is a decent player as well. But that is where another area that they came unstuck. I'll never forget that outside break of Jonathan Davis getting around Keith Earls, who rushed up. And it was by then the game had been won, but that was the cherry on the cake, and that's the key to it. Will the classic old rugby formula? Can the forwards generate enough possession for what is, if the injuries allow, a very exciting and potentially sort of destructive Welsh back division?
That was New Zealand, Rick. This is in Lansdowne Road, mate.
Yeah, there is that. There's the new Aviva Stadium, as they like to call it. It's
same site.
It's an impressive place, and it's going to be difficult. And I expect Ireland to win. I'll be honest. And do you know, even if we had a full strength side going there, it would be extremely difficult. And I'm just looking forward to it. It's a shame it's on a Sunday, though, because I've got to go to school on Monday.
Listen, Rick, I'll let you go. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. But I'm a little bit worried that Rick there saying he expects an Irish victory. Not like him at all. Right, let's turn our attention to France versus Italy. We touched on it before. The French lineup under a new coach, Philippe Saint-André, suddenly a little bit more organisation, a little bit more discipline, which is quite frightening, because if they could do what they did in the World Cup with complete chaos, then you'd think that this team, which is pretty much, there's a few changes, but still what was there in the World Cup.
Yeah, it's like we said, bringing in a bit of sanity to the chaos. It's a very established team. I mean, we're looking at guys like Rhodri and Clerc and Yashvili, who've been around France for the last decade or so. Tranduc is still relatively young. It's good to see Julien Malzieu back on the wing. This is a guy who made his debut 2 years ago, played very well, and then slipped off the radar. I don't even think he went to the World Cup. I'm not sure if that's right. And he's just got his form back for Clermont. He's been playing so well in the Heineken Cup, and he's come back in. And this kid Fofana is fantastic. He's beaten the most defenders in the top 14. He's the top try scorer in the top 14 as well. He's class, and I cannot wait to see him play against Italy. I see a really big win in that game on Saturday.
We talked about the number 8 for England. That was a controversial decision, possibly. The number 8 for France. Annie Nordique, not there.
Who is one of the great players in world rugby today. You know, his effort in the Rugby World Cup final against New Zealand was immense, and I mean immense. Clearly didn't get on with the coach Livermore because of his outbursts post World Cup. Doesn't find himself in this particular side. I mean, they're very fortunate. Pickamoles is an outstanding number 8.
He's having a good season.
He's a different sort of a player, not quite as aerial brilliant as Imanol Aranordiki, but a good all-round player, clever player, you know, on form with Toulouse, does a lot of good things. And so there's a good balance to that with Dusautoir and Bonner. Bonner, one of the unsung heroes, great line-out player, always got his nose and head over the ball, and he's always fighting for it. You know, it's a very, very accomplished pack. And the new boy on the loose head, Debarty, who was at Perpignan, now finds himself at Clermont. He's a very big, powerful man, Belgian by birth, and incredibly powerful. And I would not like to be playing against him.
No, Italy will find, you know, this is going to be a tough one for Italy with their new coach, a Frenchman, Jacques Brunel, who has had success with Colomiers. We go back a while with that. Perpignan, winning the top 14 a few years ago, then part of the French setup. So, you know, an experienced coach, can he get even more than Nick Mallet got out of the Italian side?
Can he get more than Nick Mallet? And you look at Nick Mallet's pedigree as a coach, and you look at what he did with Italy. Can somebody else do better? Hard to say. Brunel's got good experience at international level. He was an assistant coach for about 6 years.
Under Laporte.
Under Laporte, which will stand him in good stead. It's quite bizarre to see an Italian team with no Bergamascos in it, nowhere near the 22. This is very much a new Italy where he's trying to bring through these young players who've played for Aroni and Treviso, guys like Benvenuti and Scarby in the centres and other guys such as that. But there's still a familiar feel to the pack, guys.
We'll have a look at the side now. It is that familiar look to the pack, as you say.
Castro Giovanni, Girardini, Luciccio. I mean, that's one of the best front rows in the Championship. I mean, let alone in the world. And then at number 8, Sergio Parisse, world class. world class, always
A
stands
great
up.
leader as well.
Absolutely, he always puts up, even in a struggling team. The one thing about Italy and France is that you look at the French bench, and the quality on that bench is remarkable. We've already mentioned Harry Nordique, but you've got Para, Boxis, Memos, Soszeski, Jean-Baptiste Pou. That is a ridiculous bench. Those guys would walk into any other side. And so I just can't see Italy producing another shock result. But it's a new dawn. It's a new start for Italy, and they want to get something positive out of it.
Yeah, certainly after France lost to Italy last year out there in Rome, they'll want to reverse that one.
Well, they will, but it's not a one-horse race. You know, they've got to go out there and earn it. The French now know how good Italy can be on their day. I think the challenge for Jacques Brunel is actually to transform this sort of forward-orientated game that Italy have adopted over the last few years, because it's the safe route for them, and try and encourage it, give these backs some ball on the front foot, because I think that from what I see of the Rabo 12, you know, there's some good players playing for Italian sides now, and certainly from the Heineken Cup, there's some interesting guys.
Okay, we continue the countdown to the 2012 RBS Six Nations Championship in the company of former England coach Dick Best and Ben Coles from the rugbyblog.co.uk. We're back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Sports Tonight Live as we count down to the 2012 RBS Six Nations Championship. I'm Rhodri Williams, and with me in the studio, Dick Best and Ben Coles. Before we continue the chat with them, let's hear what you, the fans, think about this coming Six Nations Championship.
France will win because I've got the best team. Probably Wales second because they're developing nicely, and England will come third, I think.
I think Wales are quite good these days, so my money's actually with Wales. They got the spirit, and I think they had a good World Cup. So I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to say Wales.
France. They've been the best so far this year. I think they've got a very good chance. I think England will come a close second.
Wales or France, I reckon. One of those two. England, not too sure at the moment.
Sam Warburton, yeah, for Wales. I think he'll put the World Cup red card behind him and really step up this time.
I like Dylan Hartley. Dylan Hartley in hooker position. He should be good and strong for us. Not too sure on the new backs though. We've got quite a young team, so.
Italy may spring a few surprises, but I can't see them finishing any higher than fourth.
Scotland have got Andy Robinson, I think it is. He's built quite a good unit there. They haven't had a good decade as far as I can see, but maybe their fortunes are on the up. So maybe put Scotland out there.
I think Scotland will continue to struggle. Ireland, I think, is rebuilding, and with O'Driscoll sort of fading off, they're going to struggle, especially leadership-wise.
Dark horse, definitely Scotland. Yeah, I think once they get going, they can do well.
So that's what the fans think there. A lot of talk about France and even Wales possibly. Goodness me, if it came down to that final game on March the 17th. Oh, goodness me, how exciting. Anyway, back to reality. Let's get some odds now ahead of the championship and join Russ Wiseman from Sporting Bet. Russ, very good evening to you.
Good evening, Rogers. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very, very tidy. Let me tell you this. I'm going to get it off my chest now. The best bet out there, can you do better? England not to win a game, 60-1. Russ. In fact, he got so upset at my idea, he's put the phone down. Stunned. He's dropped out. We'll come back.
He's got to put a bet on.
It's an interesting bet, that one, though, isn't it?
Not to win. Well, if you think about it, if they lose at Murrayfield, then you've got to go to Italy and play in front of 70,000-80,000 at the Stadio Olimpico, and then from there, Wales, France away in Paris, Ireland on the last day. It's not impossible.
Let's have a look at the outright winner odds. And we've got there France, the favourites, Wales 3-1. England out at 21s with Ireland. Scotland 22-1. And Italy rank outside at 151. Do you think those odds are a fair reflection, Dick Best?
Yes, I do. I'm surprised England. England are level with Ireland, and I'd have put them sort of slightly below Ireland. But I think they're pretty fair.
Grand
Slam. But it's an interesting bet, England not to win a game, I would have to say.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult start for them. Scotland and then Italy away. If Italy put in a good performance against France this week, Who knows?
England not to win 60-1, but as former England coach, you wouldn't put money on that, would you?
Well, you wouldn't be seen going in the bookies, would you? You'd have to do it incognito.
I did see you coming in. You should have seen Dick come in tonight in a rather heavy coat with a hat. Couldn't recognise him. Grand Slam odds. No Grand Slam. That's an interesting one. That's my personal feeling. I don't think anybody will get it this season. But that's 6-4 on France 7-2. Wales 6-1. England, Ireland there out at 10. Scotland 50-1. And then Italy 500-1. No Grand Slam, Ben.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, purely because of that last game where France have to go to Cardiff, and I've got it circled on my fixture list. That is the big one. I mean, that's a tough task for France, and they've got a relatively good history in the Millennium Stadium. But I look at those odds and I think Wales at 6-1 for a Grand Slam might be worth a bet, just because you never know. It is Wales and they're finishing up at home. That's probably the best looking odds there.
Every Welshman will be on that one.
Well, yeah, I expect you to be, actually.
Along with my 60-1 for England not to win. Right, let's have a look at the top try scorer. Vincent Clair. Malzieu probably 7-1. George North of Wales. We haven't even mentioned George North, of course, and the impact that he's had as one of Wales's new breed. Tommy Bowe, always a good shout for try scorers. Chris Ashton. Well, again, we just don't know how he's going to fit into England and how they'll perform. Do you fancy anyone there, Dick?
I think they've got it right. You know, rarely do these guys make mistakes. Clerk is an ace finisher, and he's going to be on the front foot most of the time. It's between him and Malzieu. If they stay fit for the tournament, that's very smart from the bookies.
Yeah. Anyone's view there?
Malzieu for me would probably be the bet. I think Chris Ashton at 10-1 is not bad, actually.
It's not bad. Again, it's what England are going to be like, though.
Even when England don't play well, he seems to manage to get over the whitewash. So Chris Ashton 10-1, yeah, that's not a bad bet. But Clerk and Malzieu, and even Medar as well at 14.
Foden at 22-1 is a good bet.
That is good. Good odds there.
All right, let's get your predictions then, gentlemen. First of all, just overall, very quickly. Overall.
France to win the championship and to win a Grand Slam. I just got a feeling about it. He's a smart operator, Saint Andre, and I think they're a new broom, good quality set of players, very few changes, World Cup finalists, Grand Slam winners.
Ben?
France, but no Grand Slam. I think going to Cardiff, that last game might just... You know what the Welsh are like when they get passionate and they're all there.
We're always
party poopers.
You want to
always passionate.
You don't want France to win a Grand Slam, do you?
And party poopers.
So France to beat Italy, then England, Scotland. You're going to go for Scotland, are you?
Scotland by 3-6, something like that.
Interesting.
I'll go for England. Head says Scotland, but England by 5.
And what happens in the Aviva Stadium in Dublin?
Ireland want revenge. That controversial try last year, the try that never should have been allowed, and the Rugby World Cup quarter-final. There's a lot of need to get even there. So Ireland.
Mike Phillips isn't there.
I'm going to go for Ireland as well, just to make your day.
Fantastic. That's very kind of you, Dick. I will also go. My prediction will be France to beat Italy, Scotland to narrowly beat England and upset them once again, and Wales to sneak it in Dublin. Goodness me.
That's a shock.
Well, we'll just have to wait to see what happens the first weekend coming up, and it's going to be a magnificent one. My thanks to Dick Best, former England coach, of course, and Ben Coles from the rugbyblog.co.uk. From all of us, from myself, a very good bye to you. Enjoy the Six Nations Championship this opening weekend. It's going to be an absolute cracker. From all of us here, for the time being, bye for now.
Stay ahead of the game with Sports Tonight Live. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for Sports Tonight Live on Facebook and like our fan page. Follow Sports Tonight TV on Twitter and tweet us your thoughts and opinions. Sports Tonight Live, it's the platform for the fans.